What is up, plant community? If you like my videos, go ahead and give me a like, share, and subscribe. It helps me out and it helps the channel out. It helps get me out there more, teach people more things about plants. So, today's particular video, I'm going to move him perhaps underneath here so I can maybe scoot back a bit better. Alright, but anyways, going to talk about the Macho Fern. What do we need to know about care for the Macho Fern? Now, the Macho Fern is kind of like a giant Boston fern. They're hard to overwinter. You can keep them in zones 9 and up, maybe 8 if you do a little zone pushing. But they could take tips down to 35 degrees, I found. Actually, last year I kept it outside for most of the year. I'm probably going to be doing that again, honestly. But anyways, they could take temperatures down to 35 degrees Fahrenheit. They do like humidity. They love the humidity. They do like moisture, which makes them a hard fern to overwinter. Good for hanging baskets. You just gotta remember that if you do put them in a hanging basket planter, you're gonna have to separate them. Even in a pot like this is about the max that I can honestly have this fern in. So, I'll have to get it out and eventually divide it. Now, there are two ways of dividing it. You can take it and just rip it apart with your hands, but be careful with the roots. Or you could take a butter knife or a knife of some sort and just kind of cut it in half. That is another way of separation. So that's a form of propagation you could do. Another form of propagation is you could take the spores whenever it is mature enough, and you can have those spores, but it's probably going to take a minute before you get a full-fledged fern. Um, what I have noticed too is these little aerial roots, or whatever they are. I'm not quite sure what they are. Leave something in the comment to basically tell me what they are. But I have noticed that sometimes they will give offshoots on there too, which is another form of propagation. My Boston fern has done it, and I'm sure this guy will do it too, since it's just basically a larger version of a Boston fern. They do like humidity. They can take partial sun. Where I have it now, it gets partial sunlight, and then for the rest of the day, it gets nothing but shade. Morning sun, maybe afternoon sun will be the max that this guy could take, and then after that, you gotta give it nothing but shade. You gotta remember, the ferns are used to growing understories underneath canopies, so they can't quite take direct sun really well. Um, you can fertilize, usually just a slow release fertilizer in your growing mix will be good enough for it. I put a little bit of slow release in here, which seems to really help it a lot. As you can see, it's really grown. It kind of seems like to me that they demand a little bit more fertilizer than, say, what the Boston ferns do. I just give them a tiny sprinkle. Them, I kind of give them more of a generous sprinkle of slow release fertilizer. But yeah, so that's the thing to keep in mind. During the summertime, they'll flourish, they'll do great for you. They're good to add a tropical aesthetic in a garden or anything like that if you wish to keep them into a garden. Of course, I'm sure you can dig them up and put them in a pot and overwinter them that way. It just might be more stressful on them. Therefore, I think they're best if you just keep them in a pot and do the separation or any form of propagation over the summertime or springtime, where the plant will have more warmer temps to be able to basically be able to heal itself from the damages you put on it. Wintertime would be a no-go. Now, wintertime, when it is time to overwinter them, for some of us who live more up north, instead of south in areas that are not of zone 9 to 8 and up. Um, or if you're a zone pusher, you don't really have to worry about this. You know what you're doing if you're zone pushing. Um, so for us who have to bring them in, the max you can let them take is 35 degrees. I have accidentally left them out here in 33 degrees, but here it takes 32 for a chance of frost here in Indiana, at least where I live. Um, it did get snow on it, and I was worried I was going to lose this fern because I've been growing it for a while, and well, you can see it hasn't skipped a beat really. It will lose fronds time to time. The old fronds, whenever you take it and put it outside during the summertime, it will drop its old fronds because those are more indoor fronds compared to the outdoor fronds, just like your Boston ferns do. So what'll happen is, as you can see here, they'll yellow, wither away, and they'll get iffy, and they'll kind of droop down like this little piece right there, right here. And that's nothing to really tuck that away a bit, try and make it look more pleasant. But that's nothing to really worry about. That's just basically the fern getting rid of its older foliage. Of course, it does take time to do that, and for us, summer is almost over, and pretty soon I'll have to be taking him in. Depends on if October's warm again. Usually our October has been warm lately. Used to be, it was never like that. I remember when we'd get snow in October. Anyways, I digress. So care for it indoors when it is time to overwinter them. So when it is time to overwinter them indoors, it's important to keep them by a humidifier or mist them about once every day, maybe twice every day, just to try to help them out a bit. It seems to help mine out quite a bit whenever I manage to do that for them, actually. And it seems to get them through winter. Um, so that's the thing to remember. Another thing to remember is when they are indoors, keep them by a full spectrum light, close to a full spectrum light, or keep them by a window where it will receive 6 hours of direct sunlight. Um, and that should do it, long as it's filtered, which usually through a window, your sunlight is more filtered than it is outside. So that's something to keep in mind, that unlike your Boston ferns, which also I find like a bit more of light, they need to kind of be more up against the window. Of course, keep it away from cold drafts. Unless you're in a warmer zone where maybe the most you see is 40 degrees, 35 degrees, then, in that case, say your coldest is 35 degrees, you could probably go ahead and keep them outside. They just might look a little iffy, but probably even get away with keeping them in an area where maybe the wind is hitting them a bit back and forth, but that might kind of shock them a bit, like, oh, it's warm, all of a sudden I'm getting this little chilly air coming in, like, what the heck. Um, so, yeah, and then another thing to remember is if you don't have a misting bottle or any way to mist it, you got to keep it quite humid. I would say bathrooms, but sometimes our bathrooms can get quite dry themselves. You're best off to try to keep it as humid as possible, just not enough to where you grow mold. So humidity for the ferns, I usually keep my humidity around 60%. Of course, if you have a place where you can overwinter these, you don't have to worry about that. But I keep mine at 60. Once I have I have a monitor. Once I see it reaches 60, I let that drop completely down for the day. Seems to help it out quite a bit. Um, but yeah, I mean, otherwise than that, that's really about it for the Macho Fern. Really ain't a whole lot to talk about. One more thing I forgot to mention is pests, actually. Um, so when it comes down to ferns and you get mealybugs, thrips, spider mites, something like that, you're probably not going to cure it. Honestly, I'm just gonna be blunt with you, because you try anything, it's gonna get in the leaflets here. And what will happen is, because see, there's little things within the fern here. Oh, look, I'm actually getting spores. Speaking of spores, oh, yay, it's loving it out here. Oh, sorry. Um, anyways, so your ferns, they take in air through, or carbon monoxide through the leaflets. So, you know, whenever you do use neem oil or something like that, even leaf shine, man, it will clog up those little holes in the leaves that we can't see because they're pretty small, they're microscopic, and it kills the whole plant. I mean, it can kill the whole plant. In some cases, they've survived, but it's just damaging to the plant and it hurts them. Um, I know leaf shine's kind of controversial though, but I'm just saying, like neem oil, you're probably better off, honestly, in my experience, when I deal with pests, to let it experience some cold chill. That seems to honestly help a lot, to be honest. Like, just let it get a little bit of a chill, 35 degrees max. Nothing more, nothing less. They seem to do all right with that. Um, but yeah, otherwise than that, another thing I forgot to mention is when you do get spores, since I've got spores here starting to form, is when you do get these. Let me show you up close here. See all those little dots there? Those are spores. That means that the fern is ready to reproduce. And so what you do is, because see, naturally in the wild, what will happen is, whenever the wind is blowing and, these spores, they're not brown right now, but when they do brown, the wind, same with the Boston fern, will actually blow these spores about. All right, sorry about that, fat guy on a motorcycle. Anyways, so these spores will blow about. And when these spores blow about, that's how they wind up reproducing with new ferns around their habitat. Um, Cold hardy ferns like the Christmas fern actually produce them faster than what tropical ferns do. So, fun fact there. They usually try to, or they have another way of spreading to be more dominant before they can spread their spores. Anywho, so one way to propagate, like I said, was by spores. But the way you do this is you actually cut the frond off, or the leaflet, whatever you want to call it, and you put that in a baggie of some sort, or maybe a paper bag, something white or clear to where you can see the spores, because the spores are going to look like a little powder dust. You're not really, I mean, as you can see here, they're going to be quite small. So when that happens, the leaf will start to get brown and the spores will drop. And you can use those spores to grow a whole new Macho Fern or Boston Fern, generally with most ferns, even the Christmas fern. So that's one way to collect seed without, or not seed, but spores, without actually having to maybe shock the plant or harm the plant and divide it. But yeah, that's really all I got to say about the Macho Fern. I hope you guys found this video educational. Otherwise than that, I hope you guys have a good rest of the day.